بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآل الطيبين الطاهرين. We said in the discussion about Zawahirul Alfaz, we study few things. The first thing was awamir, commands. Second, nawahi, prohibitions. Third, mafahim, implicit meanings. Whether it be mafhumul muwafaqa or mukhalafa, we discussed. The fourth is al-aam wal-khas, and this is a new discussion. It's not a continuation of mafahim. In the Arabic edition, this is not mentioned as a new discussion, but it has to be a new discussion. So, after awamir, nawahi, mafahim, we discuss al-aam wal-khas. This is very... Pardon? Page 59. This is very important discussion.
Not in the English.
Many times, you find that a rule or ruling is given and later or in other texts some details are mentioned. Even in the secular legislation, sometimes, for example, Parliament passes a law, but then they say the details are to be, for example, decided by the government later. Okay, so there is a general law, then details by government. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the same method of conversation and communication, because Arabic is not only used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Arabic is a language that people used and keep using. And there are linguistic rules that apply to any user of Arabic. It's not that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using Arabic says, I don't follow the rules of the language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also follows the rule of language. So, one of the rules of language, as I said, is that sometimes you mention a general ruling and later you go into details. Either because the time is short or sometimes you say the general rule to prepare and then gradually you explain the details. If you want to say all of it at the same time, maybe it would be confusing or would be too much. So you can give the general concept and then later you can say the details. For example, you should say 5 times prayer. Then there are different masail that we can say later, either because there is no time to mention all the details in the first place, or we want to prepare the mind of people, or maybe in the course of time, they come up with new questions, and these questions can bring new dimensions to the discussion. Many of the rulings that we have are explained after people have questions. Okay? So, sometimes you are faced with 2 texts. One is called Am, the general. One is Khas, the specific. Khas is the one that modifies Am. For example, sometimes you are told, respect all scholars. This is Am. It includes every scholar. But you find also another text which says, do not respect those scholars which are vicious or which are corrupt, which are sinful. These two, in the first sight, may look to you contradictory. You say, why? He said, Akram kulla alim, respect all scholars, but now says some of them are to be excluded. But this is not contradiction. This is very common in language. That once the focus is on saying something general, but then you may say there are also conditions, there are exceptions, there are details. Therefore, we say here, we have jam' urfi, a very beautiful term to remember. Jam' urfi. Al-jam'ul urfi. What does it mean? Means there is a way that common sense puts these two together. Urf means common sense, ordinary people, normal people. Normal people, when hear these two things, they don't take them as contradictory, and they are not also perplexed. What should we do? No, they understand very clearly that if you are told respect all the scholars, and you are also told that do not respect bad scholars, it means that respect all the scholars except bad scholars. Okay, so anyone apart from bad ones should be respected. So al-am means the general, al-khas means the specific or the modifier. Al-am, it's different from al-mutlaq, which comes in the next lesson, and maybe inshallah today we can address it. Mutlaq is also general, but the difference between am and mutlaq is that am is always through a linguistic sign. There is a word or there is a structure that indicates generality. So the generality of am should be understood from the text. But the generality of mutlaq, absolute, is not understood from the text. It's understood from muqaddamatul hikmah. So there are some rational and intellectual premises that you put together and you say that this is mutlaq. I will talk about mutlaq later, but I just wanted to tell that am is general because of something linguistic. Okay? So, the definition in the book is this. Al-ammu huwa al-lafzu dallu bil-wad'a ala shumulihi لجميع أفراد متعلقة, is the term which indicates بالوضع, means according to the way this term has been coined. You know وضع in mantiq and usul al-fiqh means to coin a term for a meaning, to allocate a term for a meaning. So, wada' is here something that is linguistic. So, the term which indicates, according to the wada', inclusiveness for all the individuals, all the instances of muta'allaqi, of what this has belonged to. For example, if we say, akram kulla alimin, respect all scholars. This is am. Because kull or all in English, kull in Arabic, are indicating that all the instances of alim are included in this ruling. If we didn't have any other evidence, we would have assumed that we must respect all scholars. Because this is what this is telling us. Akram kulla alimin, or respect all scholars. So the ruling belongs to all instances of alim. Another example is, if we are told that Hajj is obligatory, al-Hajju wajibun ala kulli mustati', is obligatory upon every person who is mustati'. So it means every person who is able to afford for going to Hajj, he should do Hajj. This is Later, another thing may say, but if this mustati, for example, is ill, so he is not required to go. It's an exception. It's khas. Or, for example, this mustati is now ajiz. In general, he's mustati, but now there is no security, or they don't give him visa. So these are excluded. When we say every mustati has to go to Hajj, means every mustati who doesn't have those problems. This is jam' or fi, this is the way common sense puts these together. What are the terms that can indicate generality? Al-Fadli umum, those terms that indicate generality. One is kull. Like, of course, this is not a ruling, but it is a very general statement. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul tastes the death. Okay? Kull. There is no exception from this sentence. If there is any exception from another sentence, then that will be khas. But this is am. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every person is going to taste death. And this is also a very beautiful explanation. Dha'iqa is taste. You are not going to do anything more than tasting the death. Yes? Because one taste of death is enough to depart from this dunya. It's not that you taste and then you say, okay, I want to have more or less. But one taste is enough. And also, how is the taste of that taste? That is also something we discuss in Muharram. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. So, kul is indicating generality. Sometimes instead of kul, we have jami' or kafa. Kafa, in Arabic, kafa, jami', qatibatan. These are things that mean all. Ammatan. Or when it's for time, you say da'iman, means in every time. Hatman, no. Hatman means certainly. It doesn't talk about the quantity. Sometimes there is nakare in a context which is negational. Nakare fi siyaq al-nafi. You know nakare al-ma'rifah. Nakare means unknown, but it has a special meaning, nakare. So, if it is nakare in siyaq al-nafi, negation. For example, if you say ja'ani rajulun, this is not because ja'ani rajulun can mean one person came to me. But if it is ma ja'ani rajulun, it's completely different. Ma ja'ani rajulun doesn't mean one person didn't come. No one came. Is it clear? So, nakare fi siyaq al-nafiyah, when it's negation, ma ja'ani rajulun. Or fi siyaq al-nahy, prohibition. For example, if I say, la tadlim ahadan, don't do injustice to anyone. If I say, at'im shakhsan, at'im rajulan, akram rajulan, this doesn't show umum. One person. If you feed one person, you can say, you have implemented at'im rajulan. But if you are told, la tadlim rajulan, this is So nakare, when it is in the negational context, whether it be nafi or nahi. You understand the difference between nafi and nahi? Yes? Alhamdulillah, you understand this. Nafi is just a statement. Nahi is prohibition. Al-jam'u al-mu'arraf bi-alif wa-lam. Jam' when it comes with alif and lam. Of course, this is not nas, this is zahir, because sometimes there can be some evidence you realize umum is not meant. If it is said akram al-ulama, jam' is ulama, plural, and is coming with alif and lam. They say this indicates generality. Akram al-ulama. It can be mufrad with alif and lam, but this is not very strong. This is controversial. If it is akram al-alim, because sometimes you don't know whether this alif or lam is for umum or not.
Can we use the terminology ba'z as well for jins, like ba'zu haywanun natiq?
So this doesn't mean generality.
It's not general.
No, it says some. Some is not general. Inna Allah as a kind of example for not for ruling, because there is no ruling here. It's just a statement. Inna Allah yuhibbu tawwabin. Tawwabin is plural. And when it comes with alif and lam means umum. Inna Allah yuhibbu tawwabin means Allah loves all who repent. Not some of them, all of them. Yuhibbul mutatahhirin. Allah loves those who seek purity and piety. All of them. It's an example for alif and lam with jam, with plural. Very useful classification is mentioned here. Are you okay? Just this is needs a little attention, but it's very helpful classification. Scholars say that there are three types of general, three types of am. Sometimes we have al-am al-istighraqi or al-umum al-istighraqi. It exhausts all the cases, all the instances. It's all inclusive. For example, imagine if we have 1,000 alim. We could have said akram this one, akram this one, akram this one, and mention 1,000 times you have to respect them. But instead of doing this, we may put them together and say akram al-ulama. What does it mean? It means that this single general command is indeed a combination of 1,000 commands. So, if someone out of 1,000 alim respects 500 alims, he has done something. It's not useless. Indeed, he has implemented 50%. Because there were 1,000 commands and he has implemented half of them. So, in istighraqi, istighraq means induction, but here means more to exhaust, inclusive. So, in al-umum al-istighraqi, indeed, you have a combination of many single commands, and each of them by itself is important. If you implement one of them, that counts, but it's not enough. If you implement two of them, that counts, but it's not enough. In order to fulfill your responsibility, you have to implement all of them, but even if you do some of them, it's good. I'm not saying it's enough, but it's useful, it counts. A practical example is, for example, months of Ramadan. Months of Ramadan with respect to days is istighraqi. With respect to days of a month. So imagine if we have 30 days, okay? If I say fast all the days of month of Ramadan, this can be broken down into 30 commands. If someone implements one command, it counts. If someone fasts only one day, that is useful, that is accepted. But he would be questioned about the other 29 days. If he fasts 2 days, it counts. But he would be asked why he didn't do 28 more days. Okay? So you understand the point? So, although we have a combination of different individuals, but each individual is also important. We call this al-umum al-istighraqi. Okay? But sometimes we have al-umum al-jam'i as a whole. We look at it as a whole. For example, you have to fast 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours. And if you consider in minutes, it would be hundreds of minutes. Okay? When we say fast from dawn to sunset, it means that every minute, every second has to be fasted. But it only works if you manage to fast all of it. Because this is considered all together as one unit, one command. Here you cannot break it down and say, okay, if I only, for example, drink at, every hour. So for example, it was, 1,000 minutes. I only drank 7 times every 2 hours. So you can say I have done 99% of fasting. No, sorry, this is not working like this. This is not like days of Ramadan. Days of Ramadan, if you fast 1 day, it counts. 2 days, it counts. And you will be asked about the rest. But during the day, every minute by itself doesn't count. Every hour by itself, even if you fast half a day, it doesn't count. You have to complete it. Okay? Otherwise, it doesn't count. And this is why we have to be very careful. We have to be very, very cautious. And if there are some people who say that, for example, you can fast shorter, when it's 18 hours, but it's better to do ihtiyat. No one says ihtiyat here is, problematic. Ihtiyat is always helping. Because imagine you have fasted 14 hours, 12 hours, but it may not be working at all. So you have to do ihtiyat at least till if it becomes like a very mainstream fatwa, that's another issue. But when something is not mainstream fatwa, you do ihtiyat. So al-umum al-jam'i means as a whole. Okay? I ask you a question now. You have a test to pass, and they give you 100 questions, and you have to answer 100 questions. Is this umum istighraqi or umum jam'i?
Jam'i. Jam'i is one majmu'ah, so.
Why istighraqi? Why jam'i?
Because it's compulsory to do all, and all together 100 questions.
So if you answer 99, you don't pass?
It depends if it says that you have.
If it is jam'i, then you have to answer 100.
Well, we need a khas for this.
Pardon?
We need a khas for this.
Yeah, what are you doing if you add in?
We need the explanation for it.
So but you have to give a criteria whether you have to be pass if you answer all 100.
No. For example, they say if you answer 60 out of 100, you pass.
Yeah.
So is it jam'i or istighraqi?
After that, because less than that,
Because if you do less than
doesn't matter 20, 30, it's not going to be counted, but after 60,
Uh-huh.
it can be like.
Up to 60 is working as a whole. So 59 doesn't work. So 60 work as one unit. Okay? Above 60 works one by one. But those 60 are not also fixed. It can be any 60. Therefore, we have another type of umum, and that is badali. And that is alternative. So you can have a choice. Okay? It can be any 60. Sometimes we tell you, respect all ulama. Sometimes we tell you, respect aliman or any alim. Ayya alim. So, this can be answered, can be implemented by respecting any scholar, but as alternative. Either this scholar or that scholar. It doesn't need to be all scholars, but any scholar counts. So there is umum. It was not said that, for example, Akram Zaydan or Amran. No. Akram, any scholar. Ayya alim. Ayya shows generality. Okay? What's badali? Like exam. Any 60. So, if I ask you about this, now you have to know that there are 3 types of umum here in exam. Umum badali, umum jam'i, and istighraqi. Yes? One example for umum jam'i, in addition to what I said about days of Ramadan, each day by itself, is believe in 12 imams. If someone believes in 10 imams, he cannot say, okay, I have implemented 10 out of 12. Okay? Or for example, if I believe in 6 Imam, I cannot say, okay, Alhamdulillah, 50% I have implemented. All 12 must be together. So this is Umum al-Jam'i. And Umum al-Badali, as I said, you can choose between this alim or that alim. Or for example, we say, release one slave, any slave. You can choose, but the ruling is on any. So there are 3 types of am: istighraqi, jam'i, badali. Now we move on to khas, a specific or modifier. One way of classifying khas is to classify it into muttasil and munfasil. Muttasil and munfasil. You know, now these terms are new for you. Okay? Like for example, of course, with all the respect, when we learn a new language, okay, everything is new for us. This is a cup, this is book, this is pen. You say, oh, today, you know, I had 10 new terms to remember, to learn. But later you see, you don't need to think about this. You will, you know, grasp them, and you don't consider that you have learned, you know, many new things. At this stage, everything is new for you. But inshallah, with repetition and, you know, mubahis, study, all these things, these become for you like a person who speaks language and he knows all the terms. These technical terms become very easy for you. Al-muttasil and al-munfasil. Muttasil means connected, attached, connected, attached. Sometimes khas comes with am. It's connected with am. And I have a good question here to see who is clever. Alhamdulillah, many of you are clever, but I want to find out today who is clever today. First, understand the difference, then I ask my question. Al-khas al-muttasil is when khas, the specific, is connected with am. For example, in the same speech that legislator mentioned am, mentioned also khas. The same speech. You don't need to go around and find khas. He said, Akram al-ulama, and in the same speech said, except for stock, except those who are sinful. Munfasil comes from fasl, means separation. Yes? Wasl means to connect. Fasl means to separate. Why chapters are called fasl in Arabic? Because they separate content. So one piece of content is this chapter, another, so we call it fusul, fasl, yes? Or for seasons, we call them fasl, because they separate days of spring from days of, for example, summer. So, munfasil means disconnected, separate. Sometimes am is mentioned, later in another speech, khas is mentioned. Okay, so this is called munfasil. For example, Mawla, master, legislator said, Akram al-ulama. Then in another hadith, in another text, we find that do not respect, for example, those who are fasiq. Okay? So, al-khas is either muttasil or munfasil. Now I have a question for those who are listening carefully and are sharp. What difference it makes if khas is connected or disconnected? Overall conclusion is the same, that you only need to respect those who are not fasiq. At the end, the result is the same. But what technical difference is there that can have some practical implications? Yes.
Munfasil is something that you want to implement over time, whereas muttasil is something you want to say together, do this ruling with this kind of specific thing all the time from the start.
No, even when it is disconnected, the time of practice should come later. Otherwise, it was not wise not to mention the details. So the details are must be mentioned as soon as they are meant. Yes.
Is it maybe because if it's muttasil or munfasil, it will affect the am, whether it's istighraqi or jam'i, for example. It will affect it in that sense. You won't know the wujub here, for example, the duty.
Yes. We are getting closer.
If it's in two separate texts, then you have to prove the authenticity of both different texts, like both hadiths, to know that it's okay. Whereas if they're one text, then you just have to prove it once, and you know that hadith before.
Yeah, but that's another issue. We assume that both texts are authentic, because if one of them is authentic, the other one is not authentic. The one that is not authentic cannot modify the one which is authentic. So we assume both are authentic.
Sheikh,
Yes.
Could we say that if the khas is mentioned with the am, then we don't take the am into consideration, we just go straight to the khas. Whereas if the khas isn't mentioned with the am, we take the am into consideration.
What do you mean take into consideration? In both cases, arm remains as arm in that area which is not excluded. Yeah? Whether you say it together or separately, that part of arm which is not excluded by khas remains under arm. So you have to respect all ulama who are not fasiq. So this is arm. Only part of it is taken out by khas. The rest is arm. Yes.
When it's just all in the one ruling, it's fixed in time, but if there's, sorry because I don't know the words elaborate, when there are the khas, the secondary ones, then there is a possibility in future that there could be something discovered to be added. The ruling could be...
Even when they are connected, in future something can be added.
I think
If I understood your point.
I think what this alludes to is a time when the people are told not even to have sex at night during the month of Ramadan.
Yeah.
And then an order came that they're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So this relates to that. It wasn't compulsory, but they were allowed. So I think this came because there's another ruling which came later.
But what
so
is
that
the
is
relation with...
al-khas al-munfasil. Initially it was al-haq al-muttasil.
No, that's not khas. The ruling was abrogated.
No.
It's not khas. Khas is not abrogation. Okay. Maybe it's too difficult. Yes.
Is it one is a rule and then the next, the khas is the exception to the rule? Can we say that?
So what's the difference then between muttasil and munfasil?
So, for example, earlier, respect all scholars, that's the rule, that's the general rule, and then the exception to that rule is, with the exception of these, some scholars that are not righteous, for example.
Okay. So in both cases, if they are not righteous, they are excluded.
Yeah, but they are scholars, but then they're not righteous, so
yes.
It's,
So all the scholars which are not righteous are excluded in both cases. Okay, let me give you an example. I give you a clue. Imagine we have which says respect all ulama. Then we have khas which says don't respect those who are sinful, and this can be connected or disconnected. And we have doubt whether a person who commits a minor sin is fasiq or not. Does these two have different implications? When you are said akrim al-ulama illa al-fusaq, connected, or akrim al-ulama and later la tukrim al-fusaq min al-ulama, disconnected, and you have a doubt in both cases whether committing a minor sin is fisq or not. Is there any difference between the two?
Yes, because you lean towards akram in this situation.
Towards?
You lean toward, when it's munfasil, you lean towards, in this situation, respecting the scholar.
Why?
Because it's less of a big deal. Because you're not sure. You focus on the am.
So what's the difference between connected and disconnected?
You're more likely to focus on the am.
Why?
When there's no part to it.
Why?
Because it's not connected to it. It's not.
Doesn't make difference. The overall result is that we should not respect those who are fasiq.
Is it an either or scenario or an and scenario? When you are connected, you consider khas more. But when you are in a munfasil situation,
No.
either or.
No, khas has the same power. Khas has the same power. Yes. You know, when is mentioned separately, then generality is established. Generality is established. Then, when khas is mentioned, we only take out of it what we are sure, because generality is established. Akram al-ulama, if it is said alone, so it means that you must respect all scholars. Then later we are told there is exception. That exception has to bring out some cases. If there are cases that you have doubt because the definition of, for example, fisq is not known, you should assume that those cases that are unknown remain under because is established. In our scholarly language, ulama say umum is munaqid, means has been established, is munaqid, So if is mentioned and khas is mentioned separately, so is established, all the individuals are included, and you can only take out of it what you are sure that khas has touched and has applied. But if khas is mentioned in the side of it doesn't let from the beginning to establish generality. From the beginning, generality becomes dubious, whether it included those who commit minor sins or not. Okay? It's a very beautiful point.
Yeah. There is one point which is at the moment problem in North America, for example. We have some ulama, scholars,
Yes.
who have questioned Imam Zaman's birth,
Yes.
whether it was authenticated or not. They're scholars. Now, how can you accept them? You know about the person I'm talking about. He's actually questioned Imam Zaman's birth. They said it wasn't proved, only one person was testified. It is, scholar.
Yeah. That's about authenticity, yeah, no? So we believe that there are authentic hadith and sources for that. Now we don't talk about authenticity. We are talking about indication. You remember we said one is tahqiq al-sanad, then tahqiq al-dalala. We are not talking about dalala. We are not talking about authenticity. So, khas is muttasil or munfasil, connected or disconnected. Let us give you some example. For example, لا تنكحوا ما نكح آباؤكم من النساء إلا ما قد سلف. Surah Nisa, verse 22. You know, before Islam, they used to have also possibility of marrying wife of your father. Okay? So for example, if father had another wife, Ayah says, لا تنكحوا ما نكح آباؤكم. Don't marry those women that your fathers have married to. إلا ما قد سلف. If it was already established as a marriage before Islam, then Islam doesn't say, you should separate. This shows how difficult is divorce. That in this case doesn't say, okay, should divorce. Or for example, another case we have like, أن تجمعوا بين الأختين إلا ما قد سلف. You should not marry two sisters at the same time. In the past, it was okay. In Islam, you cannot marry two sisters at the same time. But if someone had married two sisters before Islam, then Allah doesn't say now you have to divorce them. Or one of them.
What's salaf?
Salaf means past.
Before.
Yes.
Just on this point, is this before Islam as a religion, or even if a convert, let's say, has to, would that count as salaf?
It's about legislation of this ruling. But whether it includes a convert, then this is an ijtihadi issue. But the ayah talks about legislation, means salafa means before legislation, when this law was not yet made.
We have the life of Hazrat Yaqub when he married to two sisters.
Before Islam is possible, but I'm saying in Islam this is cancelled. Okay. So the ayah says, وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا مَا نَكَحَ آبَاؤُكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا قَدْ سَلَفَ. This illa is explaining a kind of exclusion, but it is in the same sentence. So it means that you can marry women except wives of your fathers. Of course, there are also other exceptions that we learn from other sources. It's not that you say, okay, any woman who is not wife of my father, I can marry. No. This is one exception. There are other exceptions we learn from other sources. But what we wanted to say is that here, khas is connected with am. They are mentioned in the same sentence or same paragraph. Basically, they are mentioned together. But munfasil is disconnected, like this. In Surah Ma'idah, verse 6, about wudu, ablution. Ya ayyuhalladhina aman, O those who believe, إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. Okay. The ayah says when you want to say salat, when you stand for prayer, make wuzu. Okay? It seems to be applicable to everyone. إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. Every person who wants to say prayer should make a wudu. This is In the same ayah or ayah before, after, there is no mention of khas. But then, for example, in hadith, we have something that explains that this is not without exception. For example, the narrator says, قُلْتُ لَأَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ, I told Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, قوله تعالى إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة. When Allah says, when you stand for prayer, what does it mean? إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, إذا قمتم من النوم. When you wake up from sleeping, when you connected khas, needs to go through the sources, the text, The next issue is how we can draw ruling from and khas. So, when faqih, when jurist can make up his mind that this is because we said is understood through these terms, like kol, jami, nakare, fi siyaq al-naf, and so on and so forth. When he establishes that is then he looks for khas. He finds out khas, he puts them together and acts according to khas in the overlapping area. Or not overlapping, it's not overlapping. When they both cover. Because khas and do not overlap. Khas takes part of out of it. So there is a space that both of them cover, but covers something more. Menwaj. Sorry, mutlaq. Menwaj is overlapping. It's mutlaq. So one of them talks about all ulama, one of them talks about fusaqul ulama. Okay? So khas covers a piece of the area which is covered by So you establish that this is you examine for khas. If you find khas has to be followed with respect to its own territory. Do you know why khas is given significance and precedence over says all ulama should be respected. Khas says do not respect fusaq of ulama. Why we follow khas in that area that they both cover? Yes?
Because if you're following the khas, you're definitely following the correct ruling. Whereas if you're following you may end up respecting one of the fasiq scholars, and then you wouldn't be following the correct ruling.
The answer is this. If in that common space you follow nothing remains for khas. So khas becomes absurd. But if you follow khas, doesn't become absurd. Has something else. You understand? Talks about all ulama. Khas talks about some ulama who are fasiq. If we don't follow khas, then why Mawla said this? It was useless. But if we act according to khas with respect to fusaq and act according to with respect to other ulama, both of them make sense. And this is why ulama say This is also beautiful. Ulama say that it is okay to bring khas for am, but not too many exceptions. If there are too many exceptions, then it is again absurd to talk in this way. For example, if I say Akram al-ulama, then I say don't respect those who are fasiq, don't respect who are, for example, I don't know, Iranians, those who are Arabs, those who are Pakistanians, those who are Indians, and then in the end only respect the people who are, for example, brought up in certain town. Then this is absurd. Because you mentioned something that had many, many different types, and then you excluded almost all of them. So why you spoke in this way? It was easier for you to say, just respect this person. Okay? So, exclusion is okay as long as considerable part of am remains. If you take too much from am, then it doesn't make sense. Is it beautiful? Okay. So, faqih, after making sure that this is am and this is khas, he acts according to khas with respect to that common space, and acts according to the am with respect to the rest. Okay? By this, we finish our discussion about am and khas, and then inshallah we have to talk about mutlaq and muqayyad. I think I leave it for the next session, just for preparation, 1 minute for preparation. Mutlaq or absolute is very similar to am, it's general. But the difference is that there is no linguistic instrument or sign or indicator. Generality is understood by not mentioning any modifier. So sometimes I say, respect all scholars. Sometimes I say, respect scholars. If I say, respect scholars, still it is am, because I didn't specify any type of alim. But I have not emphasized on generality by bringing all or kol or jami. So mutlaq is a general whose generality is not understood from linguistic indicators. Its generality is understood rationally. We say, Mawla has mentioned something without bringing any modifier. If he had meant very specific thing, he should have mentioned. For example, Mawla told me, release a slave. Sometimes it says, release any slave. Sometimes it says, release a slave. If he said, release any slave, it's am. If he says, release a slave, it's not am. But I say, if my master had meant that this slave has to be special, he should have mentioned. Now that he has not mentioned, so he must have meant general, any slave. So this is mutlaq and muqayyad. And those rational premises that we use are called muqaddamatul hikmah, the things that the wisdom of master requires. We will talk about mutlaq and muqayyad inshallah next week. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.